When I was at the university in the early 70s, I was studying for a degree in philosophy. And it turned out that most of the professors that I had were either socialists, Marxists, or communists, or all three. I had this one philosophy professor who was teaching Marxism. He wanted the class to do a special project and turn it in to be graded. So I thought that my special project would look like this. He kept saying over and over, the end justify the means, the end justify the means. It was like some kind of socialist mantra. He said that all the killing in communist Russia and communist China were justified. I'd been to Vietnam during the war with the Merchant Marines, and I saw our soldiers that were shot up. It was hard for me to believe that all the killing was justified to expand communism. I figured that the class wasn't getting that message. A friend of mine who was in the class was going to confront the professor that the end does not always justify the means. We're talking about a stadium classroom with about 300 people in it at the University of Washington. The professor was down on the ground level and my friend Terry sat up a few levels. Terry was going to start confronting the professor and objecting that all the killing wasn't justified in China or Russia, which was an anti-communist statement. I was sitting down in the front row. I had this big coat on. I hadn't shaved for a while. My hair was kind of messed up and I looked kind of sweaty and had kind of a weird look on my face. Terry stood up to confront the professor, and when he did, I stood up, pulled a gun out of my pocket, and shot him. Bam! He grabs his heart and the blood's running all over the place. He falls to the ground. Everybody's screaming. I immediately walk out the door and this guy from the class follows me. I continued walking further up the campus. I knew this guy wanted to stop me from fleeing the crime scene. So I turned around and said, "Dude, it was a fake gun and it was ketchup. It's my class project." He looks at me and he couldn't believe it. Meanwhile, the ambulance siren is wailing and I see it drive by, the lights are flashing, and I kept walking home. The next day, I get a call from the Dean of Arts and Sciences. He wanted to see me. So I go to his office and he says, "Well, what happened yesterday?" I said that the professor was telling us that communism was so great and that killing people was justified. So I was a communist for a day. When my friend Terry confronted the professor, who was a communist, Terry had anti-communist ideas, so I shot him. I was a shining example of a good communist, and that the end justified the means by getting rid of anyone who objects to the party line, just like in communist Russia and communist China. My point was that killing people is shocking. You need to be shocked to realize what you're talking about when you justify killing millions of people to take control of a country. The end does not always justify the means. The sanctity of life shouldn't be devalued or overlooked. So as I explained my project to him, he looks at me like, He didn't really condone it, but he did shake his head as if to say, "I get it." And then he says, "You know, you're going to have to pay for that ambulance fee." And I said, "Okay." And that was it. The Black Book of Communism, published by the Harvard University Press, documents that communist regimes have killed over 100 million people in the last 100 years. The New York Times reported in March of 2018 that the per capita income in China was $4,000. In both Russia and China, the ruling class became millionaires and billionaires. No one was equal. Maybe they believe everybody's equal when they're dead. I'm Jim Nissing.